Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. Today I'm going to be talking about Queen pressings and why you should not buy the 2015 box set with the Queen studio albums full works. A couple of years back, a friend of mine bought the Queen box set, the big, I believe it was then, there are two editions of it in gold and one in black. I believe he had the first edition of the box and he was kind of excited and I was kind of excited because my love for music started with Queen. Actually, the first full album I heard was this. It was, I got the wrong cut. Was this. This is the first album I ever got. I traded it with my uncle. I made him a CDR with greatest hits of Queen, and I traded it with him for this, a first Dutch pressing of A Night at the Opera. And this would be the first album I would ever listen. I was 14 years old, I put on a headphone and I listened to this, A Night at the Opera, Dutch pressing, and in the Dead Wax it is the Blair's cut. I might get into that later on. And imagine listening to MP3s your entire life and then you hear a Queen album and a good, nice, solid pressing. It got me hooked on Queen. Now, it has never been quite easy for me, at least on the budget I had as when I was that age, to get all the Queen albums. Because once in a while I got hold of a nice Queen Dutch pressing for not so much money. So a couple of years back, before I had any first UK pressing of Queen, a friend of mine bought the box and I went online. Before I went over to him to listen to it, I went online. And the Queen world, Queen fan world, they were outrageously enthusiastic about it. Because this box was mastered by Bob Ludwig. And well, when I hear the name Bob Ludwig, I kind of get excited myself because this man is usually a brilliant, brilliant mastering engineer. And it was announced that it was cut from the analog tapes, the analog masters. Now, when you dive deep into that information, they transferred the analog masters to digitally and they worked on it to get rid of tape hiss and all sorts of things. And if you listen carefully, it sounds all analog, but it's not, because it's transferred digitally and they've done shit towards it. Now, I didn't know that. I was just as enthusiastic as the rest of the Queen fan group, because a big Queen box, and mostly of all, and that's why most of the Queen fans I know bought it. Brian May and Roger Taylor, they agreed to it. They thought this would be the best sounding version of their albums. Now, Queen fans follow these two guys blindly. There is no criticism whatsoever towards them. And of course, they're great big heroes. And I flew over to Nottingham last year to see Roger Taylor perform live. Because, I mean, these guys are heroes. But their ear of sound, these days, you can doubt whether they're trustworthy. Because when I came over to my friend all excited, and he put on Queen 2, we were sitting down and we wanted to enjoy it. And this was before we got into into the knowledge of different pressings and all. We just wanted to get into it, but it never snapped. It just never came into us. We never experienced a song like Procession the way we hoped we would. Having had the DVD and the Blu-ray of the Rainbow Show, for example, we hoped that the studio version would blow us away, and it did not. And I said, you know what? I think my version might be better. And we put on Queen 1. We put on A Night at the Opera. And what we did, a week later, I took my old pressings with me. Old Dutch pressings, not even the first UK's, old Dutch pressings. And we compared them. Queen 1, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, A Night at the Opera, and I believe we also did News of the World. All of them were nothing compared to these first Dutch pressings. Now, what was going on? The so-called great new remasters from 2015 are actually the 2011 CD masters. And they have a very tiny dynamic range. How come? Why did they mess around with these recordings? Why did they do dissolved tape hiss. I mean, something that is in the recording like tape hiss. If you want to filter things out, you're filtering out more. Why mess with the dynamics of the songs? And I do have a little theory about that. Now, Queen started off in the early days being quite an exciting band. When you take an album like Queen 1, this is, well, kind of inspired by Led Zeppelin, but also by other artists, of course. But you hear that these guys are making hard rock. They are diving into the world of hard rock and trying to make something else, something different. And an album like A Night at the Opera, they are experimenting with the studio, and they make huge, not soundscapes, huge operatic use of the studio. As a matter of fact, the tapes on this, there was so much overdubbing with all these vocals that the tapes, the original tapes, kind of wore out. They sound thin, you know. The sound quality of all the vocal overdubs, they sound kind of thin because Queen stretched it out. They had incredible things they did incredible things to studio techniques and to what you could do with the sound. Now, when you read the biographies, for example, there's one about Freddie Mercury. There are a couple about the bands. Around the end of the 70s, something started to change. Queen has always been quite aware of what is going on. Although they have a unique stamp and a unique sound, and they are true authors of their music and of their sound, they always sense the element of time. For example, when they made News of the World, it was 1977, they were kind of scared that punk would take over. They decided to do less takes on songs, so they would not dive way too deep into their own perfectionistic sense of studio techniques. And even later, and that's interesting in the biography, they stated that they were not happy with the way their songs sounded when they entered clubs. When they entered clubs, I think it has mostly got to do with when Freddie Mercury entered clubs. Because during the 70s, Freddie Mercury became much more of, how do you say, he liked to go out more. He came in loads of gay bars and he wanted danceable music. And their albums are not usually very heavy on the bass, and there's so much going on in the mid and in the highs, and it's quite artistic. But these songs are not as punchy and danceable as the world that Mercury went into and the world that later on MTV discovered. So, around the time of The Game and also this record, Hot Space, they decided, we want to change the way our music sounds. We just want to change the way our music sounds. We want to make it good for radio. Which means that they kind of leave behind the baroque, hard rock, opera elements, also in composing, but they also decide to change the way their music sounds. Now you hear it back on Hot Space, because clearly that is Mercury being inspired by soul and funk music and by danceable music for the gay scene, which he also later on did with an album like Mr. Bad Guy. Now, when you take an album like, A Kind of Magic, and you put it on, you hear something completely different than A Night at the Opera. They are not composing and writing anymore in the sense of an album which is from beginning to end a narrative which has some quirky songs, some epics, some straight rockers. They do not go for the very diverse experience of an album anymore. They make a collection of radio hits, and let's be frank, they do it incredible. No band did it like Queen. Just this album, A Kind of Magic, which is not hailed as one of their great albums. Well, if you put this on, if you put an original pressing on, and actually the first UK pressing is not even the best pressing. I found the Yugoslavian one, trust me, Yugoslavian pressing, much better, but I might go into that into another video. But this is A Kind of Magic. Pain is so close to pleasure. Who Wants to Live Forever? Princess of the Universe, 1 Year of Love, One Fish, and Friends Will Be Friends. These are hit machines. These are hit machines. But when you put it on, when you put these original versions on, you hear They make something which stands their ground on radio, in clubs, and even on videos, because Queen were also masters at video. Now, during these times, their view of their vision and the way their music is presented changes. It changes with the time. And this is why I think Brian May and Roger Taylor think the current remixes or remasters are okay. Because we live in a different time. We live in the age of Spotify. We live in an age in which headphones, small tiny headphones, should contain everything usable. So they altered their vision on their music, and that's what we're hearing right now. But is it the true meaning of the music? Even if the writers, the musicians say this is the way it should be listened to, I disagree. Because when you compare these shitty, dynamic-less, altered remasters to the beautiful quality of these originals, you hear what the true authentic sound is. Just as George Lucas thought he was doing okay by digitally messing up his Star Wars films, the Queen band members thought they were doing the best thing by digitally messing up their original beautiful albums. So do yourself a favor, go out and find the original versions. And I'm gonna do another video later on. I'm gonna take a look at what are good original Queen pressings, because it's a messy world. See you in the next video.